Hello, this is Paul Cringe from the Chichester Centre for Fairy Tale, Fantasy and Speculative Fictions, and after a long break I'm rejoined by Meg, and we're going to be talking today about Star Wars and eco-criticism, eco-fantasy and Star Wars as fairy tale. Because as we all know, I'll cut it down on the credits for the titles. As we all know, the original Star Wars film is a fairy tale. You can read it alongside props, 7 character types. You can read it alongside various functions of the fairy tale. Luke Skywalker, who I believe you've said on other recordings, is this kind of annoying, whiny.
He's a loser.
Yeah, in the first film, he's your classic Ashladen. You've got the magical helper, you've got the donor sending him off. It's riven through with these kind of fairy tale tropes. Yeah. Obviously, Empire Strikes Back becomes more Greek, tragic, Oedipal. What are you talking about? It's not there in the first film, but that's because there's some kind of revision goes on between the two films. And then the third film, which was meant to be directed by David Lynch, of course, which would have been wild, and has got teddy bears. I'm not done with kids. Has got teddy bears that clearly eat stormtroopers. They're going to eat Han Solo in the woods. So we've got this kind of natural setting. So what else have we got in terms of eco-criticism? You said this to me on another recording. It's available on my own YouTube channel, which is for the swearing, so you don't need to go there. But then shock me, as is often the case, with a thought I hadn't had about this type of stuff that I've lived with forever. So it was about lightsabers reflecting character.
Yeah, so one of the first essays I ever wrote at university, which is, I was asked to do so, it's the idea that Star Wars is inherently eco-critical. So even if you just look at the lightsabers, sadly, I really like the recent trilogy. I'm very sorry for everyone out there, but I think it's a really obvious showcase. So you've got Rey's lightsaber, which is from her, like very clear from her star, like she uses her star for it. So that's sort of that natural idea of, just creating things. But then you've got Kylo Ren's lightsaber, which isn't smooth and it cracks and it reacts to everything around it. You can see that scene in The Force Awakens where they're fighting and Rey's leaning back and you see the lightsaber across her face, Kylo's lightsaber, and it's spitting. It's like hardly controlled.
Yes.
So it's the idea that the Sith, the Force is obviously nature, the Force is sublime.
Yeah.
And it's the Sith try to control it, but they can't. Whereas the Jedi work alongside it, which is why it works for them.
Because they're in one with nature.
Yes.
And I mean, that scene you're referring to there in The Force Awakens, that's where they have the climactic fight in the woods. Mm-hmm. So you've already got something else there in terms of the Empire they buried this version of the Death Star, or they built it on an actual planet, haven't they? Because in the original trilogy, the Death Star is always an artificial moon.
Yes.
Whereas this one, and it's drawing its power from the sun. Mm-hmm. So what have we got? Something there in terms of the unnatural or the industrial imposing itself upon the natural.
Yes.
Which I hadn't thought until just now. So you see how you're sparking these ideas. And that we can see in poetic responses to the Industrial Revolution, for example.
Yeah, because also Star Wars was like one of the first blockbusters ever, like A New Hope. Really big, really big deal. And it's the way it works as the rise of things going on. And as Star Wars has progressed, there has been a shift, obviously, in politics. This is being filmed on the 7th of November 2024. The shift in politics and stuff like that. And it's really interesting because A New Hope, the idea that may the Force be with you, may hope always be with you, that being a running thing throughout. But then by the time we get to the most recent trilogy, we don't have that hope anymore. It used to be this giant rebellion, it used to be all of this, and now there's barely anyone left.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the new films recently, because obviously we've been doing part of the series on looking at them, and I was struck by how in the first one, in The Force Awakens in particular, it's meant to be the case that what had been the rebels in the original trilogy, who defeat the Empire, are now the government, and the First Order are trying to push them back to take over and to restore the Empire. And whereas by the time you get to the second one, Last Jedi, they're now the rebels again.
Yeah.
But what that film shows is a kind of systematic wiping out of the rebels as they're chased across space. And what's clearly lifted from Battlestar Galactica, I think that's what that reminds me of, is the hunt for the remnants of humanity there. What's interesting, I think, though, is two things to pick up on your point about New Hope. Famously, of course, Lucas says that he's writing about Nixon.
Yeah.
So that, but of course, he doesn't get it made until Nixon's already gone. So the sense in which looking back, but then of course, by the time you get to Return of the Jedi, Reagan's in office. There's that kind of tension is there anyway, that you rightly say about now. But I think what's interesting in the Last Jedi, in terms of your eco reading of it, is how Rey tracks down Luke Skywalker, and he's living on an island in a fairly rough condition. It's the original Jedi Temple, that's right, isn't it? And it's on those islands just off the west coast of Ireland. I've forgotten which islands it is, which I think is where that book Haven by Emma Craven is set, which is again about monks and trying to survive in a hostile environment. But it's interesting that Rey comes on a desert planet like Luke Skywalker does originally. And in order to find Luke Skywalker, she has to go off into this kind of desolate wilderness, like when he goes to find Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. But again, it's a natural environment. So is that all part of this reading, that the Force retreats to these natural environments when the technological nightmare of the Empire takes over?
Absolutely. So you have, and like the Death Star, it's a really big deal in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's completely ridiculous that the Death Star could have existed, like dropped into the island with the ocean. However, if you do the eco-critical reading, obviously it survived, because A, it was designed to survive space.
Yeah.
Obviously it's going to survive some water, but B, it's just not comparable to water. It's so separate from nature because it's man-made.
Yeah.
Obviously it continued to exist. And the way the Force retreats into those places, I have actual notes.
I've noticed that. I thought this is really serious this time. We're not just winging it. It's not just increasingly shaking memories.
But it's there you go. So the Force is not a power that you have. It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, a tension, a balance that binds the universe together.
That's Luke Skywalker in the last Jedi.
Yeah.
I saw that bit last week. Yeah, I was struck by that, because that's clearly referencing back to Obi-Wan Kenobi saying the Force is an energy that surrounds us and binds us to the universe.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Yeah. Which they become luminous beings at the end, of course, when they're Force ghosts.
Only Jedi can be Force ghosts.
Yes. Yes.
Whereas it's Palpatine returned. Yeah, okay. But also they make such a point of being like, oh, his followers have created this clone, like these Sith beings have had to do this man-made. And you see the parts of him in the big tanks.
Yeah.
And that's so blatantly man-made, and that's other people doing it. Whereas the Jedi can just come back as part of the Force, because they accept and they work alongside the Force, even their clothing. So in The Rise of maybe The Last Jedi, I think it's The Last Jedi, it's The Last Jedi, when Rey is getting more and more into seeing Kylo as like a possible option, someone to work with, you watch her clothes get darker and darker and more unnatural. Because when she originally finds Luke, he's obviously in his Jedi robes, and they're pure white and they're natural, and there's something that he's put these ceremonial robes on to become a part of nature and to say goodbye to the Jedi, and then he takes them off again when he realizes this dark force of Rey has appeared. And the entirety of, Darth Vader, obviously pure black. Knights of Ren, Knights of Ren are red, which is obviously one of the least natural colors to find. So it's all really interlinked with the color coordination.
It always struck me as interesting, and more so now with your discussion of colours, that in Return of the Jedi, Luke wears black. Because of course originally there was some suggestion, wasn't there, it was going to be called Revenge of the Jedi, but it was pointing out revenge is not a Jedi concept.
Yeah.
And I think when he's on Endor, it is Endor, isn't it, where the Ewoks live, and he's wearing the camouflage, there's a sense then in which they're at one with nature, or they can exist with nature. The way that the stormtroopers on the speeder bikes, they still stand out in there.
Yeah.
But when he goes to fight Darth Vader and Palpatine, and of course, that whole section there is about the son having to kill the father to emerge as the man. That's running throughout Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's obvious when Kylo kills Han Solo, but because he's still an adolescent, he has to kill Snoke as well then, and so you get this list of fathers who have to die. But I think there's something significant that Luke, when he goes up to the Death Star, knows before that, isn't it? It's when he goes to that base the Empire put on Endor, he takes off the camouflage.
And it's also, because I don't know what your opinion about this is, Luke's characterization in the recent trilogy of retreating into nature and running away, people hate that characterization. I think it works really well.
I do as well. I never understood this criticism. I mean, I'm not as immersed in online Star Wars fandom as I am, say, Doctor Who, which is probably healthy because who needs both of them?
Yeah.
But I think that it's a misunderstanding about how he's functioning as the new trilogy's version of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And also, his retreat into nature makes sense when you realise that going to kill Darth Vader, wearing that black, he knows that he has to step into the dark side to kill her.
I mean, the sign is there in Return of the Jedi. When he slices Darth Vader's hand off and he realizes it's mechanical, he looks at his own hand. What's interesting, I think, in the new trilogy is that he doesn't have the prosthetic. He's got the mechanical hand is on display all the time. What's that about though? When he's retreated to the island, or even at the end, where is it sand or is it snow that they're on?
No, it's salt.
It's salt, isn't it? Yeah, hence the red in it.
Yeah, because also it's Kylo purposely pulling his foot during that fight to reveal the red underneath, like he's expecting to see that blood from Luke, and also he doesn't because Luke's not actually there.
Yeah.
But it's that disruption of nature, whereas Luke's, forward projection, that doesn't interact with nature. He lets nature stay pure.
I mean, the other thing with the salt, though, of course, is that salt's a preservative, but also if you salt the earth, you kill the earth. So there's two ways of reading the salt in that scene. But the hand, why is his hand the mechanical? It's clearly mechanical at that point. And again, it looks like something. It looks like those claw things that the new Cylons have in Battlestar Galactica. Why do you think the hand is exposed like that?
I think it's an acceptance that the Force doesn't belong to the Jedi. I think it's obviously that is Luke's argument. The Force doesn't belong to the Jedi. The Force doesn't belong to any of us. Nature doesn't belong to any of us. The sublime doesn't belong to any of us. But I think it's that acceptance that he is no longer the pure that he thought he was as a pure Jedi. And it's very clear to me personally that as he stepped over that, he's accepted that, and that's why he's retreated. He saw that mechanical hand going to kill. Immediately forgotten his name. Kylo Ren. What's his name? Ben Solo. There you go. He sees that mechanical hand going to kill Ben Solo in the same way that Darth Vader did.
Right.
And he goes, "Oh no, look who I've become." And I think it's really important that he keeps that mechanical hand on him, and it is visibly mechanical.
Yeah.
Because it's that constant reminder that he cut himself off from the Force. So that's that reasoning. He doesn't know when Han dies.
No.
Where's Han?
Yes.
He's so aggressively removed himself from it that he has to have that reminder.
He doesn't feel the tremble in the Force that you would expect. I hadn't thought of that before either. Yeah, he has cut himself off completely, and the hand then acts as a reminder that he can't be part of that world fully anyway, because to be mechanical is to not be one with the Force. Yeah, I think the clothing argument's really interesting, because if you think back to the prequels, they live on Coruscant, don't they? And it's a hyper mechanized society. It's meant to reflect, I think, Imperial Rome. I think is lurking somewhere behind it. And yet you've got essentially these hermit figures wandering around the place. and that makes them almost the unnatural incursions into that society. There's something going on there that suggests that the Jedi can't really, these two things can't exist together comfortably, or not forever. I mean, we're told the Old Republic was 1,000 years, lasted for 1,000 years, or 1,000 years before. But how far then does technological developments mean increasingly the Jedi don't really belong in this world that they're meant to be defending?
Exactly.
Because of course, in New Hope, the contrast is made between the blaster and the lightsaber. And whereas the lightsaber is an elegant weapon for a more civilized age, still that sense that they're kind of a hangover, and they're kind of the last of their kind.
And it's also it's one of my least favorite arguments ever, but I will bring it up. Why is Rey so good with her lightsaber all of a sudden? It seems very natural to her.
Yeah.
Whereas you see her training with her staff, which is something she's made herself, she's cobbled together. Her staff feels very natural. I don't know how you react to it, but it feels very natural to me. And having that transition of the staff to the lightsaber shows how alongside nature she is.
You could do the counter argument because she makes the staff herself odds and ends that she finds. I forgot what the desert planet's called, because she collects junk, doesn't she? She sells junk for moisture.
Yeah.
And because she makes it herself, Jackie, that's it. There's a weird thing going on around civilization. The lightsaber civilizes her.
Yeah.
But does it also remove it from the natural world, which I think then connects to your argument there, that her more natural weapon is the one that she's made herself.
Yeah, but then also her final saber is the golden saber.
Yeah.
And it's from her staff.
Yes. So something she made herself.
And it's not green and it's not red. It's the most natural color is that color of the sun.
Yes. Which I suppose then, if we think back to the Death Star, the star is a sun. The sun should give life, but this one doesn't. It brings death. And again, it's this kind of this corruption of the natural. If the motif of the sun is light, then it can pass on to her. Then that's kind of a restoration of order and the natural in that sequence.
Well, it even goes to this is slightly relevant, but it's the very basicness of even Qui-Gon Jinn being the first person we see really teaching the Force and bringing that balance when Qui or Qi, Chai, which is Taoism and Buddhism, and it's the whole point of that is from Chinese culture. That is just bringing body and nature together. It's bringing the soul and the body together.
So I hadn't thought of that either. That does work, doesn't it? They're obsessed with balance.
Oh yeah.
He's meant to bring balance to the Force, isn't he? And he's always pointing out, by killing everyone, but you're not looking at the whole sequence. The new trilogy kind of impacts on that, but I think Rey is the figure who brings balance at the end. I mean, we don't know what it was meant to look like anyway, because the various convolutions around who's writing scripts kind of ruins the idea that there's a central idea. But I think it does tie into that central idea, and so back all the way to Phantom Menace, which is a much better film than this. It is a much better film. The lightsaber fights are awesome again.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And if you're picking up your color symbolism, Darth Maul's got a very red face. Yes. He's the least natural figure.
Yes.
And he's got the two-ended lightsaber, so he kind of he deceives, doesn't he? Because that's how he's able to cut Qui-Gon Jinn in half. Of course, then you halve him as well. So you all idea about bringing balance and restoring. He's a symbol for that loss of.
Just think about the unnaturalness of the Sith as well. It's how Palpatine, not Palpatine. Shoot, who's the name of it? We had this conversation the other day. The name of the big Snoke. Snoke projects himself as this giant being.
Yes.
And we see him. He's like what, 6'5"?
Yeah. If that.
So it's that projection, and it's mocking nature, mocking the Force of the Jedi, mocking the Force ghosts.
Yes. Yes, actually it is, and which you would tie then to the hologram of Palpatine in Empire Strikes Back.
I also think easily it could, that whole the story starting off with that projection of Leia.
Yes.
Thank God they finally gave her Force powers. She deserved them from day one. I maintain that stance. You can never take that from me.
The issue there is that at that point they're not thinking of her as a sister, or indeed necessarily Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father. I think the original idea is that it is as it appears in the script. Darth Vader has killed Luke's father. Darth Vader is he's Obi-Wan's apprentice who's gone to the seed.
But it still works very well.
Oh yeah.
You have twins, you've got the balance.
Yeah.
You've got Leia's projection. You've got Luke's Force Ghost.
Yes. Yes.
So even at that most basic concept.
What's also interesting then in terms of what you said about the Sith then and the unnatural is death.
Mm-hmm.
How they cheat death.
Yes.
Because in what I think is one of the best scenes, certainly in the prequels, maybe in the whole thing, is when Palpatine goes to the theatre and you have that whole seduction, grooming of Anakin with the story about the Sith Lord who could cheat death. And it's clearly that it's Palpatine telling his own story about how he's killed his Sith master.
Yeah.
And there's that great there's a lesson there somewhere, I think is the line, and because he's got that kind of Francis Urquhart type voice, it sounds much better when he does it, because it's that idea that Anakin has had the dream that Padme dying, and he becomes desperate to keep her alive, the way that he can't save his mother, and this notion that the Sith can somehow stop you dying, but it's Anakin they stop dying, but not in a natural way. They turn him into a machine.
Yeah. Also, what are your thoughts on women being fridged in Star Wars?
But fridged, I can never really remember what fridge means. Fridge is when you kill the character.
Kill a woman specifically for male improvement. Because I also think that works with the idea of eco-racism, because it's how much the Sith love killing their women. Like, it seems to be their thing. It's the whole idea of the death of the mothers, and it's the idea of the death of Padme, R.I.P. So that is, especially the death during childbirth, which is one of death to alive, one of the most natural things.
Yes, and again, it ties into the Sith and
no relationship.
Not a rejection of death. No relationship is one thing. No natural childbirth, because no one has sex in Star Wars apart from Anakin and Padme.
And haven't they?
In the original 6, in this one subsequently, but also it's because Anakin as Jesus figure.
Yes.
Yeah, the Mechichlorians implant him, but I think that's right. That there is, because Lucas gets himself into a right mess, and we've had this conversation before. Originally, Anakin's meant to be 12 or 13. And the trauma is being separated from the mother. Lucas then argues that the trauma of a 9-year-old being separated from his mother is greater than a 13-year-old. Hence, he makes Anakin 9, and that causes all kinds of problems in terms of the casting. Well, I think he's quite good, that little kid. And then the weird relationship.
That little kid.
Yeah, I mean, people were really horrible about him, but actually, he's working with
Anakin terrifies me.
I mean, in a more sophisticated an actual science fiction rather than this kind of fairy tale in space, you'd have something that Padme species age differently to but that's nothing. So it does become fairly creepy.
Oh, Annie, you've all grown up.
But then, of course, it's not the separation of the mother; it's the brutal death of the mother at the hands of the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders, and his inability to save her. And of course, it causes this rage in him.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't improve him, but it pushes him closer to where he's going to go. And his fear of her dying pushes him further into that as well. So I think they do fridge there, where there are women.
Yeah. Fear of death versus the acceptance of death.
Yeah.
If you accept death, you a Force Ghost. If you reject death, you just disappear.
Yes. I mean, Luke clearly accepts death in Last Jedi. The brushing the shoulders is a great nonchalant moment, but it's also a sense of brushing away the world, and
it's him becoming a legend again.
Yeah. Yes.
That end scene with the kids.
Yeah.
I am Luke Skywalker. I cried when I first saw that. I'm not even gonna lie, because it's the idea that the Jedi become a legend again.
Yes.
Because when you first meet them, none of them believed. Even Rey, even though she is a living, barely seems to believe in the legend of Luke Skywalker, barely seems to believe in everything that's just we know has happened within the franchise.
Yeah.
So having the legend of Luke Skywalker come back having him become one again with the sublime and with the earth and with history.
Yes.
Really cool.
I mean, it makes me think of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
This notion of the mechanical, the unnatural, and the natural, and it makes me think about when and the fear of death and not accepting death, because that's running through Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It makes me think about when Victor goes up the mountain, we have that great sublime moment, and then the creature comes around the corner, and you have the unnatural rejection of death coming around the corner to confront the figure in the natural world. I think that's running through this as well, whether by accident or design. And I don't know enough about the description process, but I think clearly you can see all of these ideas are running through. In not a heavy fashion. It's not beating you on the head with it, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I think the most obvious moment is the destruction of the trees in Force Awakens. That's the Empire imposing itself upon the natural world.
Yeah.
It's more subtly done, I think, in Return of the Jedi. But of course, that's also partly Lucas commenting on the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And obviously the Ewoks of the Viet Cong. And the Empire is America. So it's a dangerously subversive text, which I assume in the current climate we won't see disappearing. Although, as you can see with some Doctor Who fans in the last week who didn't like being told not to vote for Trump, these things prompt strong reactions. People, well, we won't get into that because what we've had here is a quite clear, brilliant, Meg, reading of this. Probably the most important fantasy franchise that we've got.
Yeah.
And I assume we can see that eco-critical reading in some of the Disney productions. Can we do that? We're not going to do it now, obviously, but in something like The Mandalorian, can we see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad can confirm.
Oh, well, that's one for another day.
I haven't watched them, and I texted my dad to check, and he was like, yes.
That's one for another day. So we'll tempt you with that one. I'm also going to tempt you with this. I'm going to hold the poster up.
It's going to be backwards.
It's backwards. It says Tom Baker's Gothic Delights. That's me talking about Gothic fiction and Tom Baker's career. That's available. There's a Teams link available for that from Heather Robbins. So h.robbins@chai.ac.uk. A recording of that should turn up here in about 3 weeks, always assuming that we don't make a bodge of. I don't want to look at you because it's not you that bodges the equipment, and it's not me for that instance either. But that will be there, and so we'll have another one of these then, Mandalorian or something else. We'll see.
Let's see.
Okay. Good. Well, I hope you enjoy that, and we'll have something soon for you. So thanks. Bye for now.
Bye. Stop recording.